The space station Harmony 7 buzzed with its usual mixture of alien languages, mechanical hums, and the occasional burst of steam from the ancient atmospheric recyclers. Dr. Sarah Chun adjusted her thick glasses and pushed a strand of messy brown hair behind her ear as she hurried through the crowded marketplace section, clutching her tablet and a worn leather satchel filled with dental tools. She was already 20 minutes late for her shift at the medical bay, having spent the morning absorbed in research about xenobiology tooth structures. Most humans on the station worked in trade, security, or basic maintenance, but Sarah had carved out a unique niche as the station's only dentist willing to work on non-human species. It wasn't glamorous work, and it certainly didn't pay as well as the lucrative shipping contracts her peers pursued, but Sarah found alien dental anatomy absolutely fascinating. The corridor leading to the medical bay was unusually crowded today. Groups of various species huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. Sarah caught fragments of conversation in Galactic Standard as she squeezed past a cluster of 6-armed hexapods. Never seen anything like it. One was saying, its translator device crackling with static. The Draknari just sitting there, not moving, not eating. Heard it's been 3 days now, another replied. Station security doesn't know what to do. Can't exactly force a Draknari to do anything. Sarah's curiosity was immediately piqued. The Draknari were legendary throughout the galaxy. Massive dragon-like beings with scales harder than most ship armor and breath that could melt through steel bulkheads. They were also notoriously proud and rarely asked for help with anything. For one to be sitting motionless for 3 days was unprecedented. She quickened her pace toward the medical bay, where she found Dr. Velox, the station's chief medical officer, frantically pacing behind his desk. The tall, blue-skinned Aldorian looked up as Sarah entered, relief flooding his features. "Sarah, thank the void you're here. We have a situation that's frankly above my expertise level." "Let me guess," Sarah said, setting down her satchel. "This is about the Draknari everyone's talking about." Dr. Velox nodded grimly. "Craxus the Flamebearer. He arrived on a cargo transport 3 days ago and immediately took up residence in Docking Bay 7. Since then, he hasn't moved, hasn't spoken to anyone, and, most importantly, hasn't eaten anything. Station Administrator Quellick is beside herself." Sarah pulled up a chair and leaned forward. "What do we know about his condition?" "That's just it. We don't know anything. No one can get close enough to examine him. He's not being aggressive, mind you, but Draknari personal space is substantial. Anyone who approaches within 50 meters gets a warning growl that reportedly shakes the entire docking bay. Security tried sending in a pro-droid, but he incinerated it with a brief puff of flame. Have you tried communicating with him remotely?" "Of course. We've hailed him on every frequency, sent text messages to his personal communicator, even tried having different species attempt contact in case it was a cultural issue. He responds to none of it. Just sits there with his head lowered, occasionally letting out these mournful sounds." Sarah stood and began pacing herself, her mind racing through possibilities. She'd studied Draknari physiology during her xenobiology courses, though admittedly most of the available research was theoretical since few Draknari ever submitted to medical examination. "Dr. Velox, do we have any historical data on Draknari medical issues? Anything that might cause this kind of behavior?" The Aldorian's long fingers danced across his desk console. "I've been researching that for hours. Draknari are remarkably hardy creatures. Their immune systems can fight off virtually any known pathogen. Their scales provide protection against most physical injuries, and their internal temperature regulation is so efficient they can survive in environments that would kill most species. But surely they must get sick sometimes?" "Very rarely, and when they do, the documentation is sparse. Most Draknari prefer to deal with medical issues privately, considering it a sign of weakness to seek outside help." Dr. Velox paused, highlighting something on his screen. "However, I did find one interesting reference in the Galactic Medical Database. There's a brief mention of something called flame sickness that can affect Draknari, but the details are classified under their cultural privacy laws." Sarah felt a spark of excitement. "Flame sickness? That sounds like it could be respiratory related. What about dental issues? Any mention of those?" "Dental?" Dr. Velox looked puzzled. "Why would dental problems cause this kind of behavior?" "Think about it," Sarah said, beginning to pace more energetically. Draknari are carnivorous. Their entire culture revolves around hunting, eating, and their flame-breathing abilities. If Kraxus is having dental problems severe enough to prevent him from eating or using his flame breath properly, it would be incredibly debilitating. Not just physically, but psychologically devastating for a proud Draknari. Dr. Velox's eyes widened. You think he's in pain? I think he's in agony and too proud to admit it. Dental pain is notoriously severe across all species. For a creature whose entire identity revolves around their bite strength and flame production, a serious tooth problem would be catastrophic. The two medical professionals stared at each other for a moment, the implications sinking in. Sarah, Dr. Velox said slowly, even if you're right, how do we help him? We can't exactly walk up to a Draknari and ask to look in his mouth. And even if we could, do you have any idea how dangerous Draknari dental work would be? Their saliva is acidic enough to dissolve most metals. Their jaw pressure could crush a shuttlecraft, and that's assuming he doesn't accidentally incinerate you with his breath. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her mind working through the challenge. She'd always been drawn to difficult cases, the problems that others considered impossible. It was what had led her to specialize in alien dentistry in the first place. I need to see him first, she finally said. Not to examine him, just to observe. Sometimes you can tell a lot about dental issues from external behavior patterns. Dr. Velox looked skeptical, but nodded. I'll contact station security. They can escort you to docking bay 7. But, Sarah, please be careful. We have no idea how stable his mental state is right now. 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself walking through the corridors toward docking bay 7 alongside Security Chief Thorn, a gruff human with cybernetic implants replacing his left arm and eye. Other than acknowledging her presence with a grunt, he'd been silent during their journey. Before we get there, Thorn said as they approached the final turn, you need to understand what you're walking into. This thing is massive. I've seen Draknari before, but Kraxus is easily one of the largest I've encountered. He's sitting in the center of the bay, and the entire area reeks of sulfur and despair. My advice? Look, observe, then get out quickly. Sarah nodded, checking that her tablet was ready to take notes. As they rounded the corner and entered the observation deck overlooking docking bay 7, her breath caught in her throat. Kraxus the Flamebearer was indeed massive. Even sitting with his head lowered, he towered nearly 20 feet high. His scales were deep crimson with golden highlights that seemed to shimmer even in the bay's harsh artificial lighting. His wings were folded tight against his back, and his long tail was curled around his body in what Sarah recognized as a defensive posture. But it was his behavior that immediately confirmed her suspicions. Every few minutes, Kraxus would lift his great head slightly and attempt to open his mouth, only to immediately close it again with what appeared to be a wince. Occasionally, he would touch the right side of his massive jaw with one clawed hand, holding it there for several seconds before lowering the hand with obvious reluctance. He's definitely in dental pain, Sarah whispered to Thorn, making notes on her tablet. See how he keeps favoring the right side? And the way he aborts each attempt to open his mouth fully? Classic signs of severe tooth pain. Okay, so you were right, Thorn replied in a low voice. Now what? We can't exactly call in a dental hygienist for this. Sarah continued observing, noting every detail of Kraxus's behavior. The dragon's eyes, when occasionally visible, showed clear signs of exhaustion and pain. His breathing was shallow, probably to minimize jaw movement. Most telling of all, there were small scorch marks around his position where he'd obviously attempted to produce flame and failed, likely due to pain or inability to open his mouth properly. I need to talk to him, Sarah said suddenly. Thorn turned to stare at her. Are you insane? He's incinerated every probe that's come within 50 meters. Probes aren't people. And, more importantly, probes can't help him with his problem. He's been sitting here for 3 days because he's too proud to ask for help, but he's also in too much pain to leave and seek treatment elsewhere. He's stuck. Before Thorn could stop her, Sarah activated the bay's communication system. Kraxus the Flamebearer, she said, her voice echoing through the vast space. My name is Dr. Sarah Chun. I'm a dentist, and I believe I can help you. The great dragon's head snapped up, golden eyes locking onto the observation deck. For a moment, Sarah thought she might have made a terrible mistake. Then Kraxus spoke, his voice like distant thunder, even through the communication system. You are human. Yes, Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice steady. I specialize in dental care for non-human species. I can see that you're in pain, and I think I might be able to help. There was a long silence. Then, to everyone's shock, Craxus slowly rose to his feet, his massive form casting shadows across the entire bay. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of desperate hope that tugged at Sarah's heart. Small human dentist, can you truly fix what causes such agony? The pain has become unbearable. Sarah's heart pounded as she looked into Craxus's massive golden eyes. The desperation she heard in his voice was unmistakable, and it overrode any fear she might have felt about the enormous dragon before her. I can try, she said, her voice carrying more confidence than she felt. But I'll need to examine you properly first. Would you be willing to let me approach? Security Chief Thorne grabbed her arm. Sarah, this is madness. Even if he doesn't mean to hurt you, one wrong move, and you could be fried to a crisp or crushed like an insect. But Craxus had already begun moving, lowering himself back to the bay floor and positioning himself closer to the observation deck. Small, brave dentist, he rumbled. I give you my word of honor as a flame bearer that no harm will come to you while you attempt to help me. But know this, I have not eaten in 4 days, and the pain grows worse with each passing hour. If you cannot help me, I may not be able to control my flame much longer. The implication was clear. If Sarah couldn't help him soon, Craxus might lose control of his abilities entirely, potentially endangering the entire station. I understand, Sarah said, then turned to Thorne. I need my full dental kit from the medical bay, plus any industrial-grade pain medication Dr. Velox can spare. Also, see if you can find some kind of industrial cooling system, something to keep the temperature down while I work. Sarah, you can't be serious about this. Chief Thorne, look at him. Really look. He's a proud warrior who's been reduced to sitting motionless for 4 days because of dental pain. If we don't help him, he's either going to die here or lose control and potentially damage the station. Either way, people are going to get hurt. Thorne stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head. You humans are all crazy, he muttered, but he was already activating his communicator to relay her requests. 30 minutes later, Sarah stood at the entrance to Docking Bay 7, wearing a specially modified environmental suit designed to protect against heat and acid. Her dental kit had been supplemented with tools borrowed from the station's engineering department, including high-powered lights and several different types of scanning equipment. Dr. Velox appeared beside her, carrying a case of medical supplies. I prepared the strongest pain medications we have, plus some experimental nerve blocks that should work on Draknari physiology. Are you absolutely certain about this, Sarah? Because I'm fairly sure this violates about 17 different medical safety protocols. Probably more than 17, Sarah admitted. But sometimes you have to take calculated risks to help someone who really needs it. She activated the bay's intercom again. Craxus, I'm coming down now. I'll need you to stay very still while I examine you. Can you do that? Yes, small dentist. I will be as still as stone. Sarah entered the bay, immediately hit by waves of heat and the strong sulfuric smell that seemed to emanate from all Draknari. As she approached Craxus, she was struck again by just how massive he was. His head alone was larger than most shuttlecrafts. I'm going to start by taking some external scans, she called up to him. Then, I'll need to look inside your mouth. I know this might be painful, but I need to see what we're dealing with. Craxus lowered his great head until it was just a few feet from the bay floor. Do what you must, brave human. The pain cannot be worse than what I already endure. Sarah began with thermal scans, immediately noticing a hot spot on the right side of Craxus's jaw that glowed brightly on her scanner. There's definitely inflammation here, she said, more to herself than to anyone else. Significant swelling in the jaw area. She moved around to get different angles, noting that Craxus tracked her movement with his eyes, but kept perfectly still otherwise. When she positioned herself in front of his massive head, she took a deep breath. Okay, Craxus, I need you to open your mouth. Just a little at first, and stop immediately if the pain becomes too severe. The dragon's jaw began to part, revealing teeth that were each the size of Sarah's entire arm. But she quickly saw the problem. On the right side of his mouth, one of his massive canine teeth was visibly cracked, with what appeared to be a severe infection around the root. I can see the issue, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm despite the magnitude of the problem before her. You have a cracked tooth with what looks like a serious infection. The good news is that it's treatable. The challenging news is that treating it is going to require some unconventional methods. Craxus closed his mouth carefully. Tell me, small dentist, what must be done? Sarah stepped back and activated her communicator. Dr. Velox, I need you to prepare for emergency surgery. We're dealing with a massive infection around a cracked tooth. The tooth will need to be extracted, the infection site cleaned and treated, and we'll need to manage pain throughout a procedure that could take several hours. Sarah, Dr. Velox's voice crackled through the comm. How exactly do you plan to perform oral surgery on Draknari? His saliva is acidic enough to dissolve our instruments, and one reflexive bite could be fatal. Sarah looked up at Craxus, who was watching her intently. I have an idea, but it's going to require trust on both sides. She addressed the dragon directly. Craxus, I can fix this, but the procedure is going to be painful and difficult. I'll need you to remain conscious and cooperative throughout several hours of work. Are you willing to do that? Small human, Craxus replied, his voice heavy with exhaustion. I have endured 4 days of agony that grows worse each hour. If you believe you can end this suffering, I will endure whatever is necessary. Sarah nodded and opened her communicator again. Chief Thorne, I need you to contact the engineering department. We're going to need to modify docking Bay 7 for a surgical procedure. Specifically, I need you to set up a sterile field generator, multiple cooling units to keep the temperature manageable, and see if you can rig up some kind of saliva management system. Saliva management? Came Thorne's confused reply. Draknari saliva is highly acidic. We need to neutralize it somehow, or it'll destroy my instruments before I can use them. Also, see if the chemistry lab can synthesize some kind of acid-resistant coating for my tools. For the next 2 hours, the entire station seemed to mobilize around the unprecedented medical situation in docking Bay 7. Engineers worked to install cooling systems and sterile field generators. The chemistry lab worked frantically to develop acid-resistant coatings for surgical instruments. Dr. Velox consulted with xenobiology experts via subspace communication to determine the proper dosages of pain medication and nerve blocks for a creature of Craxus's size. Meanwhile, Sarah stayed with Craxus, talking to him and monitoring his condition. She quickly discovered that despite his fearsome appearance, the dragon was actually quite intelligent and well-educated, with a particular interest in ancient galactic history. You know, Craxus said during one of their conversations, in all my travels, I have never encountered a human willing to attempt something this audacious. Most species would have simply waited for me to leave or die quietly. Most humans would probably do the same thing, Sarah admitted. But I became a dentist because I wanted to help people with problems that others couldn't or wouldn't tackle. The fact that you're not technically human doesn't change that. Your species has a reputation for being recklessly helpful, Craxus observed. I had always assumed it was exaggeration. Oh, it's probably not exaggerated enough, Sarah laughed. We have a tendency to bite off more than we can chew, so to speak. Despite his pain, Craxus made a sound that might have been laughter. An interesting choice of idioms, given our current situation. By late afternoon, the makeshift surgical suite was ready. The bay had been transformed with sterile field generators, multiple cooling units that brought the temperature down to merely warm instead of sweltering, and a complex system of pumps and neutralizing agents designed to manage Craxus's acidic saliva. Dr. Velox entered the bay wearing full protective gear and carrying a medical bag that looked comically small compared to their patient. I've prepared enough pain medication to knock out a space whale, he announced, plus nerve blocks that should help localize the pain relief to the surgical site. Sarah suited up in her protective gear and checked her instruments one final time. The engineering department had done an excellent job coating them with an acid-resistant polymer that should hold up long enough for the procedure. All right, Craxus, she said, approaching the massive dragon. Are you ready to get this tooth fixed? Craxus raised his great head and looked directly at her. Small, brave dentist, I have never been more ready for anything in my life. Please end this suffering. Sarah took a deep breath, activated her instruments, and stepped toward the open mouth of one of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Behind her, She could hear Dr. Velox muttering what sounded like prayers in 3 different languages. The most challenging dental procedure in galactic history was about to begin. The first challenge came immediately. Even with Craxus trying to open his mouth as widely as possible, the angle was all wrong for Sarah to work effectively. His massive canine teeth, each the size of a small tree trunk, blocked most of her access to the infected area. "This isn't going to work," Dr. Velox said, his voice muffled by his protective gear. "There's no way to get proper access to the surgical site." Sarah stepped back and studied the problem. In human dentistry, patients could be positioned and repositioned easily. With a 20-foot dragon, that wasn't exactly an option. "Craxus," she called up to him, "I need to ask you to do something that might seem strange. Can you roll over onto your side? I need to approach the tooth from a different angle." The great dragon considered this for a moment. "I have never been in such a position while conscious," he admitted. "It is not natural for a Draknari to expose our underside to anyone." "I understand that it goes against your instincts," Sarah said gently. "But I can't reach the infected tooth properly from this angle. I need you to trust me." There was a long pause, then Craxus began the slow process of rolling onto his side. The movement was clearly painful for him, and Sarah could hear small groans of discomfort. When he was finally positioned with his head on its side, the infected tooth was much more accessible. "Thank you," Sarah said. "I know that wasn't easy for you." "Small dentist," Craxus replied, his voice somewhat strained from the awkward position. "If this ends the pain, I would stand on my head if you asked it." Dr. Velox began administering the pain medication and nerve blocks, using injections that were more like small harpoons given the scale they were working with. "The medications should start taking effect in a few minutes," he announced. While they waited for the pain relief to kick in, Sarah used her scanners to get a better view of the infected area. What she saw was both better and worse than she'd expected. The crack in the tooth went deep, almost to the root, and the infection had spread throughout the surrounding tissue. However, it didn't appear to have reached the bone yet. "Okay," she said, activating her comm to update the observers in the control room. "We're looking at a severely cracked tooth with extensive soft tissue infection. The good news is that it hasn't reached the bone. The challenging news is that this is going to require both extraction and extensive debridement of the infected tissue." Chief Thorne's voice crackled through the comm. "In layman's terms, Doc, I need to pull the tooth and clean out a lot of infected tissue. It's going to take several hours, and it's not going to be pleasant for our patient." From his position on the floor, Craxus spoke up. "Small dentist, the pain medications your colleague has given me are remarkable. I can still feel pressure, but the sharp agony has decreased significantly. Please proceed." Sarah approached the massive tooth with her instruments. The acid-resistant coating on her tools was holding up well, though she could see small wisps of vapor where Craxus's saliva made contact with the metal. The extraction itself proved to be the most challenging part. The tooth was enormous and deeply rooted, and despite the pain medication, Craxus couldn't help but tense up as Sarah worked to loosen it. Each time he tensed, his jaw muscles would contract slightly, creating enough pressure to potentially crush Sarah if she wasn't extremely careful. "I need you to try to stay as relaxed as possible," she told him. "I know it's difficult, but any tension in your jaw makes this much more dangerous for both of us." "I am trying, small dentist," Craxus replied through gritted teeth. "But my instincts scream at me to clamp down when I feel pressure on my teeth." Dr. Velox administered another dose of muscle relaxant, which helped considerably. After nearly an hour of careful work, Sarah finally felt the tooth begin to loosen significantly. "Almost there," she announced. "One more good pull, and got it." The infected tooth came free with a wet sound that echoed throughout the bay. It was even larger up close, nearly 4 feet long, and wickedly sharp despite the crack that ran through it. Sarah set it aside and immediately turned her attention to the extraction site. "Now comes the really delicate part," she said, switching to smaller, more precise instruments. "I need to clean out all the infected tissue without damaging the surrounding healthy tissue." This phase of the surgery required intense concentration. Sarah worked methodically, removing infected tissue bit by bit, while the saliva management system worked overtime to keep the site clear. The smell was incredible, a mixture of sulfur, acid, and infection that made her grateful for her suit's air filtration system. "How are you feeling, Craxus?" she asked during a brief break. "Much better already," the dragon replied, and she could hear genuine relief in his voice. "The sharp pain is gone, replaced only by the ache one would expect after such a procedure. Small dentist, I believe you are working miracles." After 3 hours of painstaking work, Sarah finally stepped back. The extraction site had been thoroughly cleaned, treated with antibiotics, and sealed with a biocompatible material that would dissolve harmlessly over time. "That's it," she announced. "The tooth is out, the infection is cleared, and the site is sealed. You should start feeling much better over the next few days." Craxus carefully moved his jaw, testing the range of motion. "It is strange. The absence of pain feels almost foreign after so many days of agony." He carefully rolled back into an upright position. "Small, brave dentist. How can I ever repay such kindness?" "No payment necessary," Sarah said, beginning to pack up her instruments. "Just take care of yourself, and follow up with any local medical facilities if you have any concerns during healing." Dr. Velox was already preparing aftercare instructions. "I'm prescribing antibiotics and pain medications for the next 2 weeks. The extraction site should be fully healed within a month, assuming no complications." It was then that Chief Thorne's voice came through the comm with an urgency that made everyone freeze. "We have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up 3 Draknari warships approaching the station at high speed. ETA is 6 hours. The bay fell silent except for the hum of the cooling systems. Craxus raised his great head, his golden eyes suddenly alert. "Warships?" Sarah asked. "Why would warships be coming here?" Craxus's expression grew grim. "Because, small dentist, I'm not just any Draknari. I am Craxus the Flame-Bearer, 3rd Prince of the Draconic Sovereignty and heir to the Crimson Throne. My disappearance has undoubtedly caused concern among my people." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Your royalty? Why didn't you mention this before?" "Because it was irrelevant to my medical needs," Craxus replied. "A toothache affects prince and commoner equally. However, my extended absence has apparently prompted my father to send a military response." Chief Thorne's voice crackled through again. "The lead ship is hailing us. They're demanding to know the status of Prince Craxus and threatening to search the station by force if necessary." Sarah looked around at the makeshift surgical setup, then at Craxus, who was looking decidedly sheepish for a 20-foot dragon. "Any chance we can explain this diplomatically?" she asked. "That depends," Craxus said, "on how well my people react to learning that their prince was reduced to seeking help from aliens for something as mundane as dental problems. Dragons are proud creatures. This could be seen as either a sign of weakness or a demonstration of your people's remarkable medical capabilities." Dr. Velox was already pulling up diplomatic protocols on his tablet. "The Draconic Sovereignty has formal relations with the Galactic Federation, but they're known to be temperamental when it comes to perceived slights against their royalty." Sarah looked at the massive dragon before her, then at the sealed extraction site that represented 3 hours of delicate work. An idea began forming in her mind. "Craxus," she said slowly, "how would your people react if they knew that not only did we successfully treat you, but that we performed medical procedures that no Draknari physician could have accomplished?" The dragon's eyes gleamed with sudden understanding. "You are thinking like a true strategist, small dentist. Indeed, my people respect capability and results above all else. If they were to learn that human medicine had achieved something remarkable, then we don't frame this as you needing help," Sarah said, excitement growing in her voice. "We frame this as groundbreaking interspecies medical cooperation, a successful procedure that demonstrates the value of human innovation and Draknari resilience working together." Chief Thorne's voice cut through their planning. "Whatever you're going to do, you'd better do it fast. Those warships will be here in less than 6 hours, and they're not exactly known for their patience." Sarah looked around at her colleagues, then up at Craxus. "Well, Prince, are you ready to turn a dental emergency into a diplomatic triumph?" Craxus stretched his jaw experimentally, then produced a small, controlled burst of flame, the first he'd managed in days. "Small, brave dentist, I believe we are about to give my people a story they will remember for generations." The next few hours passed in a blur of diplomatic preparation. Station Administrator Quelek, a nervous Tentaclan who had been dealing with increasingly frantic communications from the Draknari fleet, was both relieved and terrified to learn that Prince Kraxus was not only alive but had been receiving medical treatment. "You understand," Quelek said during an emergency briefing, his tentacles writhing with anxiety, "that if the Draknari fleet commanders believed their prince was mistreated in any way, they could destroy this station without a second thought. Which is why we're going to show them exactly what happened," Sarah said, reviewing the documentation she and Dr. Velox had prepared. Complete medical records, surgical footage, and, most importantly, a fully recovered prince who can speak for himself. Kraxus had insisted on being present for the briefing, despite Dr. Velox's concerns about him moving around so soon after surgery. The Dragon Prince had positioned himself carefully in the station's main conference room, which had required removing several walls to accommodate his bulk. "My people value strength and capability above all else," Kraxus explained to the assembled station personnel. "The fact that humans were able to accomplish something that Draknari medicine could not will be seen as intriguing rather than insulting. However, the approach must be handled carefully." Chief Thorn was monitoring the approaching fleet. 3 heavy cruisers, all armed with enough firepower to reduce this station to space dust. The lead ship is the Crimson Fury, flagship of Admiral Vorthak the Scorching. He's Prince Kraxus's uncle and apparently not known for his patience. Sarah felt a flutter of nerves, but pushed it aside. She'd just performed surgery on a dragon prince. She could handle a diplomatic meeting. "What's our plan for first contact?" "I will speak with them first," Kraxus said. "Establish that I am well, and that the station personnel have been most helpful. Then, we will invite a delegation aboard to see the evidence of human medical capabilities." Dr. Velox looked up from his tablet. "I prepared a complete presentation on the surgical procedure, including anatomical comparisons between human and Draknari dental structures. It should demonstrate the level of expertise required for the surgery. And I've documented the entire procedure," Sarah added. "Not just the medical aspects, but the engineering challenges we had to solve, the acid-resistant coatings, the cooling systems, the saliva management. It shows systematic problem-solving and innovation." Station Administrator Quelek's tentacles had calmed somewhat. "So our approach is to present this as a demonstration of human medical advancement and interspecies cooperation?" "Exactly," Kraxus confirmed. "Frame it as an opportunity for our peoples to share knowledge and capabilities. Draknari are warriors, but we are not fools. We recognize valuable allies when we encounter them." The Draknari fleet arrived exactly when predicted, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The 3 warships were massive, elegant vessels that looked like they'd been carved from single pieces of dark metal and shaped by dragon breath. Even on the station's view screen, they were impressive and intimidating. Chief Thorn received the first communication. "Station Harmony 7. This is Admiral Vorthak of the Crimson Fury. We demand immediate confirmation of the status of Prince Kraxus, the Flamebearer. You have exactly 10 minutes to respond." Kraxus moved to the communication console, which had been hastily modified to accommodate his size. "Uncle Vorthak," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the transmission. "It is good to hear your voice, though I confess surprise at your dramatic arrival." There was a brief pause, then Admiral Vorthak's voice came through, tinged with relief and irritation. "Nephew, you disappeared for over a week with no word. Your father was preparing to mobilize the entire Third Fleet. Where have you been?" "I have been indisposed by a medical condition that required specialized treatment. I am pleased to report that I have received excellent care from the medical staff of this station." "Medical condition? What manner of illness it could affect a Draknari prince?" Kraxus glanced at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "Uncle, I suffered from severe dental trauma that led to systemic infection. The condition was beyond the capabilities of our own physicians to treat safely. However, the human medical staff here accomplished what I had believed impossible." Another pause, longer this time. "Humans." "Nephew, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that human medicine has achieved something remarkable. Not only did they correctly diagnose a condition that had baffled our own healers, but they successfully performed surgical procedures that I would have thought impossible. I believe Father would be very interested in learning about these capabilities. Sarah could practically hear Admiral Vorthak thinking through the implications. The Draconic Sovereignty was always interested in any technology or capability that might give them an advantage. Very well, the Admiral said finally. I will bring a small delegation aboard to assess this situation. Prepare to receive us within the hour. The next hour was a frenzy of preparation. The station's largest docking bay was cleared and configured to receive a Draknari shuttle. Dr. Velox set up his presentation equipment, while Sarah gathered her instruments and documentation. Chief Thorne positioned security personnel strategically, though everyone understood that if the Draknari delegation decided to become hostile, station security wouldn't be able to stop them. Remember, Craxus advised, be direct and confident when speaking with my uncle. Draknari respect straightforward communication and dislike what they perceive as weakness or uncertainty. The Draknari shuttle was a sleek, intimidating craft that looked like a miniature warship. It docked with barely a sound, and the delegation that emerged was impressive even by Draknari standards. Admiral Vorthak was only slightly smaller than Craxus, with deep blue scales and silver highlights. He was accompanied by two other Draknari who Sarah assumed were medical officers and security personnel. Uncle, Craxus greeted the Admiral with what appeared to be a formal head bow. Allow me to introduce Dr. Sarah Chun, the human physician who performed my treatment, and Dr. Velox, the station's chief medical officer. Admiral Vorthak's golden eyes focused on Sarah with an intensity that made her feel like she was being examined under a microscope. You are the human who claims to have performed surgery on a Draknari prince? I am the human who successfully performed surgery on a Draknari prince, Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady and confident. A complex dental extraction with extensive infection control, completed using adapted human techniques and improvised equipment. The Admiral's expression was unreadable. Show me. Dr. Velox began his presentation, displaying the medical scans and documentation on the conference room's large screen. As you can see, Prince Craxus presented with a severely cracked canine tooth and extensive infection of the surrounding tissues. The condition was life-threatening and was causing severe pain that prevented normal feeding and flame production. Sarah took over, explaining the surgical approach and the engineering challenges they'd overcome. The primary difficulties were the size differential, the acidic properties of Draknari saliva, and the need to maintain precise control while working in an environment that could be lethal with one wrong move. She showed footage of the surgery, including the moment when the infected tooth was removed. Admiral Vorthak leaned forward, clearly interested despite his intimidating demeanor. The acid-resistant coatings alone represent significant materials science innovation, Sarah continued. But the real breakthrough was the collaborative approach combining human precision and problem-solving with Prince Craxus's remarkable patience and cooperation. Admiral Vorthak turned to examine Craxus. Nephew, open your mouth. Let me see this human's work. Craxus complied, revealing the healing extraction site. Even Sarah had to admit it looked good, clean, properly sealed, and showing excellent healing progress. The pain? Admiral Vorthak asked. Gone, Craxus replied simply. For the first time in days, I can eat, speak, and breathe flame without agony. The humans accomplished in 3 hours what our own healers said was impossible without life-threatening surgery. Admiral Vorthak was quiet for a long moment, studying the documentation and images. Finally, he turned back to Sarah and Dr. Velox. This is impressive, he admitted. Human medical techniques are clearly more advanced than our intelligence had indicated. Tell me, Dr. Chun, would your methods work on other Draknari conditions? Sarah felt her heart rate increase. This was exactly the direction they'd hoped the conversation would go. That would depend on the specific conditions, she said carefully. But I believe human and Draknari medical knowledge could complement each other very effectively. We have different strengths and approaches that could be mutually beneficial. Uncle, Craxus interjected, I believe Father would be very interested in establishing formal medical exchange programs. Human precision and innovation, combined with Draknari resilience and healing capabilities, could advance medicine for both our species. Admiral Vorthack's expression shifted to what Sarah was beginning to recognize as the Draknari equivalent of a smile. Indeed, nephew. I believe your father will be very interested in this development. He turned back to Sarah. Dr. Chun, on behalf of the Draconic Sovereignty, I formally thank you for your excellent care of Prince Kraxus. Your actions today may have prevented a diplomatic incident and opened doors to beneficial cooperation between our peoples. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. It was my pleasure, Admiral. Prince Kraxus was an exemplary patient, and the experience has been incredibly educational for all of us. There is, however, one more matter to address, Admiral Vorthack said, his tone becoming more formal. Prince Kraxus, your father has instructed me to remind you that royal dental hygiene is apparently more important than previously believed. You are to report to the palace medical staff for a comprehensive dental examination upon your return. Despite his impressive size and royal bearing, Prince Kraxus actually looked slightly embarrassed. Yes, uncle. I will comply with father's instructions. Dr. Velox stepped forward. Admiral, we've prepared comprehensive aftercare instructions and recommended follow-up procedures. We want to ensure Prince Kraxus heals completely. Excellent. And Dr. Chun, Admiral Vorthack added, I am authorized to invite you to visit the Draconic Sovereignty as a guest to the royal family. Your expertise could be valuable in treating other similar cases. Sarah blinked in surprise. That's an incredible honor, Admiral. I would be very interested in such an opportunity. Then it is settled. Prince Kraxus will return with us, and arrangements will be made for future medical cooperation between our peoples. Admiral Vorthack paused, then added, also, the story of a human dentist who fixed a dragon prince's tooth is likely to become quite popular among my people. You may find yourself something of a celebrity. As the meeting concluded and preparations began for Prince Kraxus's departure, Sarah couldn't help but smile. What had started as a simple dental emergency had turned into something much larger, a bridge between species and the beginning of what could be a remarkable collaboration. Small, brave dentist, Kraxus said as they prepared to say goodbye. You have given me more than just relief from pain. You have shown me that courage and skill can be found in the most unexpected places. I will not forget this. Neither will I, Sarah replied. Take care of yourself, Prince. And remember to floss. Despite everything, the massive dragon actually laughed at that. I will remember, Dr. Chun. I will remember everything about this remarkable day. 6 months later, Dr. Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the medical research vessel Harmony's Promise, watching as they approached the Draconic Sovereignty's capital world of Pyrones. The planet was a breathtaking sight, volcanic mountain ranges glowing with internal fire, vast crystal formations that caught and reflected the light of the system's twin suns, and massive structures that looked like they had been carved directly from living rock by dragon breath. Her life had changed dramatically since that day in Docking Bay 7. The story of the human dentist who had operated on Prince Kraxus had indeed spread throughout Draknari space, exactly as Admiral Vorthack had predicted. More surprisingly, it had also spread throughout human space and beyond. Sarah had found herself featured in medical journals, interviewed by interspecies news networks, and invited to present at xenobiology conferences across the galaxy. But the most significant change was the ship she now found herself on. The Harmony's Promise was a joint human-Draknari medical research vessel, the first of its kind. It had been constructed using human engineering precision and Draknari metallurgy, resulting in a ship that was both incredibly advanced and capable of operating in extreme environments that would destroy conventional vessels. Dr. Chun to the bridge came the announcement over the ship's communication system. We're receiving clearance to land at the Royal Medical Complex. Sarah made her way to the bridge, where she found Captain Martinez, a former Earth Navy officer who had volunteered for the challenging assignment of commanding a ship with a mixed human and Draknari crew. The Draknari crew members were smaller than their military counterparts, but still impressive beings who had adapted remarkably well to working alongside humans. How are you feeling about this, Doc? Captain Martinez asked as they began their descent toward the planet's surface. First human to receive full medical privileges in the Draconic Sovereignty. That's got to be pretty exciting. Exciting and terrifying in equal measure, Sarah admitted, watching the landscape grow larger as they descended. I've been studying Draknari physiology for 6 months, but there's a big difference between theory and practice. Dr. Velox, who had been invited to join the research program, looked up from his console. You'll do fine, Sarah. You've already proven that human medical techniques can work on Draknari patients. Now we get to see how far we can push those boundaries. Their destination was the Royal Medical Complex, a vast structure built into the side of an active volcano. The architecture was both beautiful and intimidating, with flowing lines that seemed to follow the natural contours of the rock face. As they landed, Sarah could see Draknari medical personnel waiting to greet them, along with a familiar massive red and gold form. Prince Kraxus was there to welcome them personally. The reunion was warm, if somewhat formal given the diplomatic implications. Kraxus looked excellent, his scales gleaming with health, his movements fluid and pain-free. The extraction site had healed perfectly, leaving only the faintest scar. Dr. Chun, Kraxus greeted her as she disembarked. Welcome to Pyrones. I trust your journey was comfortable. Very much so, Your Highness. The Harmony's Promise is an incredible ship. Human and Draknari engineering working together has produced something remarkable. Indeed it has. Much like human and Draknari medicine, it would seem. Kraxus gestured toward the medical complex. Come, let me show you what we have accomplished since our last meeting. As they toured the facility, Sarah was amazed by what she saw. The Draknari had adapted human medical techniques to their own scale and needs, creating surgical suites that could accommodate patients of enormous size while maintaining the precision necessary for delicate procedures. They had also developed new materials and techniques that improved on the original human methods. We have had 17 successful dental procedures since your visit to Harmony 7, Dr. Thakaris, the complex's chief dental surgeon, explained as they examined one of the surgical suites, all using adaptations of your techniques. The success rate has been extraordinary. But the tour's most impressive stop was the research laboratory where human and Draknari scientists were working side by side on various projects. Sarah watched in fascination as a human researcher and a Draknari colleague collaborated on developing new acid-resistant materials, their different perspectives and capabilities creating solutions that neither could have achieved alone. This is what I had hoped to see, Sarah said to Prince Kraxus. Not just humans helping Draknari or Draknari helping humans, but both species learning from each other. Your example on Harmony 7 showed us the possibilities, Kraxus replied. But I must confess, there's another matter I wish to discuss with you. We have encountered a medical situation that may require your particular expertise. Sarah's interest was immediately piqued. What kind of situation? Prince Kraxus led her to a private conference room where several other Draknari were waiting, including Admiral Vorthak and an elderly female Draknari with silver scales that Sarah guessed was probably some kind of senior medical advisor. Dr. Chun, Admiral Vorthak greeted her formally. Thank you for coming. We have a delicate situation that may benefit from human medical innovation. The elderly Draknari stepped forward. I am Dr. Zarafina, Chief Royal Physician. Dr. Chun, we have recently encountered a condition that affects young Draknari during their adolescent growth phase. Traditional treatments have proven inadequate. She activated a holographic display showing medical scans of what appeared to be a young Draknari. The condition affects flame production during the critical developmental phase, when young dragons first learn to control their breath. If not properly treated, it can result in permanent inability to produce flame, which is culturally devastating for our people. Sarah studied the scans carefully. The condition appeared to involve malformation of the specialized organs that Draknari use to produce their flame breath. It was incredibly complex, involving not just anatomy, but also the unique biochemistry that allowed dragons to create and control fire. How many young Draknari are affected? She asked. Currently, 17 younglings across our territory, Dr. Zarafina replied. The condition appears to be increasing in frequency, though we do not yet understand why. Sarah continued examining the medical data, her mind already working through possibilities. This is going to require a completely different approach from dental surgery. We're talking about reconstructive surgery on organs that don't exist in any other species, which is precisely why we need human innovation, Prince Kraxus said. Human medicine excels at adapting and improvising solutions to complex problems. Our own medical traditions are less flexible. Admiral Vorthak added, Dr. Chun, I am authorized to offer you and your team unlimited resources and support for this research. The cultural importance of flame production to our people cannot be overstated. These younglings face a lifetime of being considered incomplete if this condition cannot be treated. Sarah felt the familiar excitement that came with a challenging medical puzzle. This was exactly why she had become a doctor in the first place. I'll need to examine the affected younglings directly, study the anatomy of healthy flame production organs, and probably develop entirely new surgical techniques. Whatever you require, Dr. Zarafina assured her. We have prepared comprehensive research facilities and assigned our best medical personnel to work with you. There is one more thing, Prince Craxus added with what Sarah was learning to recognize as his diplomatic expression. The success of this research program could have significant implications for relations between our species. If human medicine can solve a problem that affects our most vulnerable citizens, it will demonstrate the value of our alliance in ways that go far beyond simple cooperation. Sarah understood the implications immediately. Success could cement human-Draknari relations for generations. Failure could set them back significantly. No pressure at all, she said with a slight smile. None whatsoever, Admiral Vorthak replied, though his expression suggested he was also attempting humor. Over the following weeks, Sarah threw herself into the research with an intensity that impressed even her Draknari colleagues. She studied healthy Draknari anatomy, examined the affected younglings, and worked with both human and Draknari researchers to understand the complex biochemistry involved in flame production. The breakthrough came during her third week on Pyrones, when she realized that the condition wasn't actually a malformation of the flame organs themselves, but rather a problem with the nerve pathways that controlled them. The organs were developing normally, but the neural connections weren't forming properly. It's not a surgical problem, she announced during a research meeting. It's a neurological one. The flame organs are fine, but the younglings can't access them because the control pathways haven't developed correctly. Dr. Thakares leaned forward. But how do we correct neural pathway development in adolescent Draknari? We don't correct it, Sarah said, excitement growing in her voice. We bypass it. If we can create artificial neural interfaces that connect directly to the flame organs, we can give a younglings conscious control over their flame production while their natural pathways finish developing. The room fell silent as the Draknari researchers processed this idea. Artificial neural interfaces? Dr. Zarafina said slowly. You propose to augment our younglings with technological implants. Temporary ones, Sarah clarified quickly. Biocompatible interfaces that would be removed once natural neural development is complete. Think of them as medical training wheels, providing support until the natural systems can take over. Prince Craxus was the first to speak. Dr. Chun, this is unprecedented. You are proposing to combine human neural interface technology with Draknari physiology. The implications are staggering. The implications for the affected younglings are what matter, Sarah replied. This could give them normal lives while their natural development catches up. The next month was spent in intense development and testing. Human neural interface technology was adapted for Draknari physiology, creating implants that could safely integrate with dragon nervous systems. The first test was conducted on a volunteer adult Draknari who had lost flame production due to an injury, and the results were extraordinary. Control is precise and natural feeling, reported the test subject. It is as if my own neural pathways were restored. The first surgery on affected youngling was performed by Sarah working alongside Dr. Thakares and a team of human and Draknari specialists. The young dragon, barely the size of a large horse and still developing her adult coloration, was understandably nervous about the procedure. Will it hurt? She asked Sarah in accented galactic standard. There might be some discomfort during recovery, Sarah replied honestly, but no more than having a tooth pulled. And when you wake up, you should be able to breathe flame just like any other young dragon. The surgery went perfectly. The neural interface integrated smoothly with the youngling's nervous system, and when she woke up from anesthesia, her first successful flame production brought cheers from the entire medical team. Word of the success spread quickly throughout Draknari space. The remaining affected younglings were brought to Pyrones for the procedure, and each surgery was successful. More importantly, follow-up examinations showed that the younglings' natural neural pathways were developing normally, meaning the implants could eventually be removed. The ceremony to mark the completion of the treatment program was held in the royal palace's Great Hall, with Prince Craxus's father, King Vorthax the Eternal Flame, presiding. Sarah found herself standing before the assembled Draknari court, receiving formal recognition for her contributions to Draknari medicine. Dr. Sarah Chen, the king announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. You have restored the future to 17 of our younglings and demonstrated the power of interspecies cooperation. The Draconic Sovereignty names you Friend of Dragons and grants you the privilege of calling upon our aid whenever it may be needed. After the ceremony, Sarah found herself in a private audience with King Vorthax and Prince Craxus. Dr. Chun, the king said, "My son tells me that your involvement in our affairs began with a simple toothache. It is remarkable how small acts of kindness can grow into great achievements." "Your Majesty, I was just doing my job," Sarah replied, "though I admit it's turned out to be much more than I expected." King Vorthax's expression grew thoughtful. Perhaps that is the nature of true progress. It begins with individuals choosing to help when help is needed, regardless of the challenges involved. Prince Craxus added, "The research programs you have helped establish will continue long after your return to human space. The collaboration between our peoples has created something neither could have achieved alone." As Sarah prepared to return to the Harmony's promise for the journey back to human space, she reflected on everything that had happened since that day on Harmony 7. A simple dental emergency had grown into something that could shape relations between species for generations to come. "Ready to head home, Doc?" Captain Martinez asked as they prepared for departure. Sarah looked back at the Royal Medical Complex, where human and Draknari researchers would continue working together on new projects. I think we've helped create something here that's bigger than any one person or species. This is what the future should look like." As the Harmony's promise lifted off from Pyrones and began its journey back to human space, Sarah smiled at the thought that it all started with a nerdy girl with thick glasses who just wanted to fix someone's tooth. Sometimes the most important journeys began with the simplest acts of kindness. The galaxy was full of possibilities when different species chose to help each other rather than fear their differences. And somewhere in Draknari space, 17 young dragons were learning to control their flames thanks to the collaboration between human innovation and Draknari determination. It was exactly the kind of future worth working toward.